and today I have one video that actually has been requested so much, but so much. I'll go through each one of Dofus classes, giving you the pros, the cons, and their own specialities. So let's dive into that. So here we are in the classes selection, and as you can see here, you can choose by their own types. I did actually a video explaining each of these variants and giving you more or less clue what is the best classes for each of these variants. So I'll leave down here the video thumbnail so you guys can check it out. But let's start things off with the Iops. So the Iops is basically the main warrior of the MMORPGs. So in Dofus is the guy that plays mid-range or even very close range. It does a lot of damage. It's a very simple class, very easy to manage, very easy to learn, has a really good easy progression learning curve. And so if you're learning the game, I think it's a good class, and if you normally like to play as a warrior in your MMORPGs, I'm sure that you'll have a lot of fun playing it. The cons about the class, however, is that since it's a very easy class, it has its own limitations, mainly because you do not possess so many tools, mainly to do whatever you would like as some other classes have, and some other classes, for example, are more melee as well or mid-range and have more tools to position, for example, or to do more stuff. But anyway, it's still a very good class, and if you're starting Dofus, I'm sure that you'll have fun with it, okay? So now let's go for the Kra. The Kra, it's pretty much the same as Iops, but long range is your classic archer MMORPG. If you like to play with some range and do really a lot of damage, and if you're still learning the game, I'm sure that you'll have a lot of fun. It's also a class that you can rush through the game really fast, but you also have its downside, which is you don't have so many tools to leave your opponents. If you have an enemy it's always on your tail, it's very hard to get rid of it. But still, you have quite some tools that can help you with that. Nowadays, the Kra actually has so many tools that can help a bit with position, but you still are very fragile, right? It's supposed to be. You are an archer, so you do not tank as much, but you also got a recent rework where you now have so many lifesteal spells, so it increases a bit the survivability of this class. So now we go for the Sacrier, and I just talked about survivability, and this class, it's the master of survivability, because you're basically the berserker of the MMORPGs. The less health you have, the more damage you do. It's basically your passive, and even the more resistant you get. So a lot of your spells is basically just draining the life of your enemies to yourself, and always try to maintain your life at lower HP range, so you can benefit from your passive a lot, so you can do more damage or be more resistant. So you always try to have your HP between 10 to 50%, for example. So because of it, can be a bit hard in the beginning for you to manage the HP. You really need to know who you're fighting with, you need to know how much damage they do, so you can more or less control how much life you should stay on your turn. But nevertheless, it's still a quite fairly easy class to play. It has a quite good learning curve. The more you progress, the harder it gets, because you get a lot of position tools, but it's also a good thing because then you have a lot of different things that you can do in your turn. It's not just about doing damage or getting HP back or tanking, it's also about positioning a lot. You have really so many tools that you can do, either to switch with enemies, to pull or attract enemies, or even allies. So now let's go for the Eniripsa, and the Eniripsa, it's the very classic healer in the MMORPGs. You'll do pretty much the biggest heal in the whole game, and you still have quite some tools. You have some elemental ways that you can actually do quite some damage or even drain the life of your enemies. And overall, it's just a support class. You enhance your allies, or you can enhance yourself. It's not a bad class if you want to play as damage or even as a draining class, but still there are better classes for this, and in my opinion, only if you want to mostly play as a healer, I think this is a really good class. Otherwise, I think there are other classes that do a better job at it. But still, you can still play, for example, with your allies, with your teammates, a more healing path, and then when you are solo, a bit more damage wise. So if you like this versatility, it's still a good class for that. But obviously, it has its cons, which you do a bit less damage than the average classes in the game. So let's go on now for the Sram. So the Sram here is your very classic rogue in the MMORPGs. So even though there are there is another class called the Rogue, which is this one here. The Sram here is the actual Rogue that you have in the MMORPGs. So you can go invisible, you can put traps, you can even connect traps so that the enemy, when it goes to one trap, it just connects all the traps and does such a huge damage. So it's a very, very fun to play. You can really manipulate a lot your enemies. You can push them to the traps. You can pull them to the traps. You have so many ways to play this class. You can even play a more poison way. So it's the elemental way. It's more like a poison. The water, it's more draining elf. The earth is more like lethal damage. For example, when the enemies are below 50% of damage, you do more damage. So you really have so many ways to play the game. Honestly, it says that it has 1-star difficulty. I honestly would put it as a 2 stars. It can really be tricky to play with Sram. You really need to manage well your traps. You really need to know what you're doing. And so I do not think it's actually a really easy class, but it has a good learning curve. So you don't need to know everything about the class to actually do something in your fights. So you have time to learn the class, and the more you progress, the more you play with the class, the better you'll get. And the good thing is that in the beginning of the game, you can actually just play a bit dumb or less tactical, and you can still progress well in the game. So that's a good thing about the class. So now let's go to the Ouginak. The Ouginak, or the Xelor in Portuguese, it's actually a class that just got a huge buff recently in the last months, last weeks. And so it's a really good class at the moment. It's basically your class that you just want to chase your enemies. You even put an enemy as a prey and you focus this enemy. And so it's a very normally melee class, but now you actually have more mid or even a bit long range with the waterway. So you already have some versatility in this class, and it's a lot about having a lot of movement points. You even transform yourself into a beast, a huge beast. You basically stack some rage, and once you get to a full rage, you transform into a big wolf, like a werewolf, and then you do more damage and you don't get tackled by the enemies. You can just move freely, you get movement points. So it's a lot of fun to play with this class nowadays, and it's really like your hunter MMORPG class, I would say. So now we have the Forgelance. The Forgelance here got a huge buff as well recently. So nowadays he's the king of the AoEs. So if you like area of effect damage, this is the perfect class for you, really. Like, you do so much damage AoE, and the more you progress in the game, the stronger the class gets. So in the beginning, it's not, no, it's better, but could be better. But the more you progress in the game, it will really get really better. And for example, I wouldn't say that it's a 2-star, I would say that it's more or less 1 to 2 stars. It's not so difficult to play this class, honestly. Nowadays, it's very straightforward in my opinion. And it's also, you have a more tanky approach that you can play with this class. So you have a more range and AoE part, and then you also have a more melee tanky, also with some AoE, okay? So it's very versatile, this class nowadays, and you have also some quite mobility. The cons about this class is that you do not have many mono-target spells, which can be tricky because some achievements and you need really to focus one target, and also you don't have much indirect damage. What is indirect damage? Is pushback or traps damage or glyphs damage or summons damage. The Forgelance has some pushback, but whenever I try to do clean hands, which is the indirect damage challenge, it's always a bit hard to do, okay, with this class. So now let's go for the Osamodas. The Osamodas here, it's your classic summoner in the MMORPG. So you'll just summon a lot. You really depend on the summons to play. Depending on your elemental way, you'll summon dragons in your fire way, you'll summon toads on the water, you'll summon Dofus with the air elemental way, and you summon goballs, which are like little chips, with the earth elemental ways. So each elemental way gives you a different approach. The fire, it's more a healing, the earth is more tank, the water, it's more melee damage, and the air is more range damage. So you have a lot of different ways to play this class, but unfortunately the class is not so good at the moment. I really think that before the Unity releases, the classes will still get quite a big buff. And so let's wait for it and let's see how it will get, this class. So now we have the Enutrof, and the Enutrof is a class that really puts the life of your enemies like an entire hell. So it's really really fun to play this class because you can remove a lot of action points, a lot of movement points, the range of your enemies, and you can even heal your allies. So it's a very important class in the game. You even have a skill that removes the movement points from everyone in the field. You really remove everything, like minus 100 movement points from everyone. It's a really interesting class to play, and it's basically alongside the Eniripsa. So they are very support classes, but Enutrof is more on the negative side, let's say, so it's more towards your enemies. But you still do a lot of damage with Enutrof if you want. You can really get rewarded to play the class as a damage dealer as well. You have a lot of potential to buff yourself with power. For example, when I was playing with Enutrof, I could buff 1000 power to the next turn. So you really have a lot of potential with the class. The con side about the class is the mobility. And so until you get to level 60 and you get this spell here, the tunnel, it's only there that you get a bit of mobility, so it's a bit tricky in the beginning. And in the beginning you need to do like an achievement point, like moving one movement point or getting unlockable. And so if an enemy tackles you, then you are very stuck. It's very annoying to play with this class until you get the tunnel. But once you pass this level, it gets super fun and really important in the game. So now let's go to the Ecaflip. The Ecaflip, it's a very fun class to play. It's based in luck, but not so much. But the lore of the class is really based on luck. But nowadays, you have some luck dependent. So you basically draw cards for your deck, and then you play this card, and then you get a bonus, you get buffs, and then you also do different effects depending on the cards that you have. So it's all about drawing cards and playing the cards and doing damage, and you have a lot of versatility with this class. You can heal, you can do damage, you can do shields, you can buff. You have so much mobility, really a lot of mobility with this class. So because of it, it's a really good class to play solo. And if you are in the team, it's also nice, but solo you get because you have a lot of things, a lot of tools that you can do in your own fights. I would say it's quite a difficult class, mainly because it's hard to understand how your passive works, but I did also a guide on how to play the Ecaflip. So if you like, you can just check. I'll leave the thumbnail video below, and you can just check for yourself if you like to play the class or not. But it has its learning curve. But the learning curve is very difficult in the beginning and gets easier the more you play. It's completely the opposite as a Sram, for example, because you really need to understand your passive, but once you go through that phase, it's really easy to play with the class, in my opinion. So now we have the Foggernaut, or the Steamer, and the Foggernaut, it's one of my favorite classes. I will play Foggernaut actually in the Unity when it releases in the mono account, because it's a very complete class. It's basically the Ecaflip, but with more AoE. So you have more area of effect damage, and you have a lot of manipulation, like you can position your enemies very close to each other. Same thing with the Forgelance. So it's basically a Forgelance and the Ecaflip together, because you also have quite some mono target damage. And you can heal your allies as well. So it's very, very similar. It goes between, I would say, between the Forgelance and the Ecaflip. The problem is that the only con is that it can be a very tricky or difficult class to master or to learn, because you have so many tools that you can use, and you can be a bit confused when you're playing your turn, what you should do or not. But this class itself, the characteristic, the description of this class is that you can summon some turrets, which is this thing over here, the Lifesaver and the Harpooner, or the Tech Turret. These things here you'll get, and you'll use these turrets to attack your enemies, to heal your allies, or to push your enemies or yourself. So you need to really play with these turrets, and you also can evolve these turrets. And so it's all about these turrets most of the time. You really play a lot with these turrets. And these turrets are stationary, they always stay on the same place, but you can move them around. But it's not like a normal summon that plays the turn for themselves. But you can still control the turrets if they are level 3, okay? So now let's go for the Feca. The Feca, it's also one of the best AoE characters that you have in the game. It's very similar to the Forgelance in this aspect. And it's also similar in the Forgelance because you also have a lot of resistance. It's a very tank class. You can protect your allies really well, or yourself. And you also put a glyph. What is a glyph? A glyph is basically something that you put on the ground. It's basically a trap, but this trap stays on the ground for a few turns, 1 turn or 2 turns. And the enemies that stay on top of the glyph will take damage on the beginning of their turns, okay? Besides damage, the glyphs can also, for example, remove the movement points, action points, or even the range, increase your range as well. And the passive of the Feca is that you get 25% resistance on top of the elemental glyph that you are on. So for example, if you are on top of an air elemental glyph, you'll get 25% air resistance. And you can also apply this passive to your allies, so they can also enjoy your own passive. So it's a very strong class. I would say that it does less damage than the Forgelance in terms of AoE damage, but it has way more utility. In my opinion, it's the best PVM class that you have in the game, but the beginning, the early levels can be a bit tough, okay? Because you'll not do a lot of damage, but once you get past this part, once you get to past like level 100 or so, it really gets strong and it really becomes the best PVM class in my opinion in the entire game. So now we have the Huppermage. The Huppermage is my main class. You basically just control the elements, you fuse the elements, the earth, fire, you fuse them, and you basically do different effects on the enemies. You can steal their range, you can put them vulnerable, you can put them with less damage. You have a lot of different things that you can do. And besides that, it's so good to position. You can position yourself from one place of the map to the other place of the map with just 2 action points, as long as you have a rune on the ground. So it's a very interesting and fun class to play. It's a bit hard because you have so many different passives, so many different mechanics that you can do. Each element gives you something different or does something different to the enemy. So you have a lot to learn. But I will do a Huppermage guide really soon. I'm just waiting for the buffs and the reworks of the classes to see what is best, what is not good anymore, and so on and so on. So it's a very similar to the Steamer here, because both have a lot of mobility, both are very versatile, you can do pretty much everything, both have area of effect damage and mono target damage. But I would say that the Huppermage is a bit more on the mono target and Foggernaut is a bit more on the AoE, okay? So now we have the Masqueraider or the Zobal. This class here, it's a very nice class to play. It's a more tank class. You give a lot of shields to your allies or to yourself. The difference between Masqueraider and the Feca is that the shields that the Feca give, it's basically resistance shields. And the shields from the Masqueraider are basically shields that enhance your health points. For example, you have 1000 health points and you give 500 shield points, you get 1500 in total, okay? So it's basically just gives you extra health points temporarily. And besides that, you also have a lot of tools that you can use with this class, either to position, to push back your enemies. You have a lot of mobility. And the characteristic about this class is that you have different masks, and depending on the mask that you are using, you get different buffs, either more damage in the distance, more damage close range, even giving yourself 1 extra action point or even 1 movement point. And depending on the mask that you have, you also do different types of spells, or some spells also have a different effect depending on the mask that you have, okay? So now we have the Pandawa. The Pandawa, it's the best tank or slash positioner in the game. People always use it on the end game level because it's a very important class, because it's just so easy to position your allies or your enemies, or even to tank your enemies. I wouldn't say that it's the best tank in the game, but it's a good compromise between a really good tank and one of the best positioners in the game. So because it's so easy to position and to tank your allies, it becomes a very good class to just be surrounded by your enemies, for example, and to help your allies to play safely at a distance from your enemies. But you can also play this class in other ways. You can play more in range, more damage as well, and you still have the Verdant way, which is a very easy class to position and to manipulate your enemies. So you can still play with damage if you want. And the characteristic about this class is that you can be drunk and sober. When you're drunk, your spells do different types of effects, and when you're sober, they also do different effects. Or you can only do some spells if you are drunk or sober, okay? So now we start with the 3 stars classes. We have the Eliotrope. The Eliotrope, it's honestly a very hard class to master. You basically put portals on your battlefield, and with these portals you basically attack through the portals, or you can even put enemies, or you can put yourself or allies through the portals. So you can basically play from one side of the battlefield to the other side of the battlefield as long as you have a portal there. So it's a very fun class to play, also very important class in the end game, PVM, and even in PvP. So as you can imagine, you can have all your team just in one side of the map, while having your enemies in the other side, for example, even with the Pandawa there, and you can just attack through the portals and do a lot of damage. Just take in consideration that it's very difficult to manage the perspective on how you attack through the portals, and in the beginning of the game, the early levels of the Eliotrope can be very, very tricky because you do not possess many action points or many movement points, and the base damage of your spells are not so high, because the further your portals are away from each other's, the more damage you get. You get 2% damage from each tile that your portals are away from each other. So you get a lot of damage if your portals are very far away, but if you play more or less at mid-close range, you'll not really get a lot of advantage with these. And in the early levels, the maps are fairly small, and so you'll not do so much damage with the Eliotrope in the beginning of the game. But once you pass this phase, it really gets super important, this class, and it's always nice to have one in the team. So now we have the Sadida. The Sadida, in my opinion, it should be a 2 stars. It's not super hard to play. The functionality of this class is that you have a lot of summons, and you summon these dolls to help you, to assist you, or even to do a bit of damage on the enemies. And the most important thing, you can also infect your enemies. What is infection? Basically, infection is you can do damage to one enemy, and you do the same damage to all other enemies that are also infected. So if you can put all your enemies infected, you'll do damage to every single enemy in the battlefield. So it's a very interesting class. In the past was more a support class, and now it became way more versatile in this aspect. You have a lot more damage. You can also heal quite a bit, and you can also support, you can give movement points, and besides that you can also remove a lot of movement points from your enemies. It's really a pain to play against a Sadida because of it, because they really remove a lot of movement points, and they do so much damage, mainly area of effect damage or the infected damage that I just explained. The problem of this class is that you do not have much mobility. You can be stuck really easily on your turn. You have a doll that can switch with you, you have also a tree that you can summon that can pull you or push you, but besides that, on your turn, specifically on your turn, it's very difficult to jump. For example, you don't have a jump, you can't really push so well your enemies, so it's a very tricky class to position your enemies or to move around, but it's still a very interesting class, and I think it will be one of the most played classes when the new servers come out. So now we come for the Rogue or the Roblard. This class here does a lot, but a lot of damage. It's a class that does the most damage in the entire game. You can really do so much damage with your bombs. You basically just put bombs, and if you have one bomb and one other bomb in 2 places and they connect on a line, you put basically a glyph on the ground, and whoever passes on this glyph takes damage and can even take some additional effects, for example, remove movement points or action points. But it's a very hard class to master. It's a very difficult class to play. In the beginning, it's very hard, really hard to play because you have limited action points and movement points. So it's very limited what you can do. You can even think in possibilities to play the class, but if you don't have action points, you cannot really do it. But if you are good with it, if you already know how to play this class, it can really be useful. You can really do a lot of stuff with this class and do a lot of indirect damage. And for example, if you want to do the Blitzkrieg achievement, which is you need to kill the mobs in 1 turn, so it's a very good class for that, because you can just stack your bombs and then do a lot, but a lot of damage. Besides that, you can also position really well yourself and even your enemies. You have so many different tools that you can position. And now let's go for the Xelor. The Xelor here is the master of teleportation. You can do so many things with Xelor, really. It basically depends just on your creativity, because you have all the different tools for it, as long as you are not in gravity, right? Because gravity is a state that incapacitates any type of transportation spells. So that's the big con of Xelor. If someone puts a gravity on you, or if the enemies cannot be teleported, you basically do not do anything in that fight. But besides that, it's a class that you do actually a lot of damage, and you can really position a lot. You can go and teleport yourself from one side of the map to the other side of the map, even your enemies. So it's a really cool class. It's just basically an Eliotrope or a Huppermage, but more difficult, way more difficult, okay? So for example, the Eliotrope can do that way easier, but it needs to have a portal there, while the Xelor, if you know the Xelor, you can do already that on the 2nd turn, for example. You can easily already put one of your enemies in your like near your team, or you can go to your enemy side and just do damage there and then come back on the same turn to where you were. So it's a very fun class to play. It's one of my favorite classes. I was a main Xelor for more than 15 years, but unfortunately now the class is not super good. Gladly, it will get a rework very recently. On this Tuesday, for example, it will get a rework. Let's see how it will come out. But honestly, it really needs this class. It really needs some love, mainly on this gravity part, because nowadays all the classes have gravity. So in PvP, this class really suffers a lot, and in PvM, it's not super. Because nowadays all the classes have gravity, so in PvP this classes really suffers a lot, and in PvM it's not super interesting because you have other classes that can do more or less the same job. So let's see how it will be on the next weeks. Let's see if this class here will be way better, and if it gets better I'll also do a video talking about it, okay? So guys, this was everything for today. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Also leave in the comments if you have any question related to these classes. Also feel free to send me a message on Discord. It's just my name, Ecaflip. And if I miss something related to any class, also leave in the comments to help any new players or returning players that are coming now to the Dofus or to the Dofus Unity in December. So guys, see you next time.